Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. We are so excited that you are here as always. It's just a wonderful time in Nashville. Jana, how are you today?
I am good. So don't lie. You're not in Nashville, Jeff. Jeff is actually in Chicago visiting his family.
I am.
He has left us. Jim and I are in Nashville. Now, it's going to be 100 again today. So
Yeah.
it's not pretty, but at least we're on the downside because we're going to get rain by the end of the week.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I'm here all week visiting family, and my grandson turns 1, so that's exciting as well. So
that's great.
It's just all fun stuff. You got to enjoy that. So, hey, Jana, Jim Morris is our guest today. You know Jim. I know Jim. We're excited to have Jim aboard. Jim, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to dive deep today.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, before we kind of do the deep dive, do me a favor just for our listeners that don't know who you are, which probably is not very many because you're pretty out there. Just give them a little bit of background about yourself, and how you got to where you're at today.
Of course. It's been an interesting journey. Grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. Found myself in Nashville, entering the world of entrepreneurship about 6 years ago. And in that time, I have learned a lot. And when I say learned a lot of things to do, a lot of things not to do. But navigating several businesses, buying a business, selling a business, pivoting a business, and finding myself running 2 today has been really, really interesting. And my goal is to share those experiences in hopes that they can benefit some of the listeners today. So
Yeah.
I do that in all different ways. I've got a podcast. I throw conferences, Impact Effect, speak on stages, and consult small businesses. So it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, it is.
That's right.
It's funny when you start working with businesses and the problems that you run into. People always say, what's the biggest problem when you're working with businesses? And I said, for them to get out of their own way.
Yeah.
I feel like-
Leadership.
yeah. They just can't get out of their own way. And so, Jim, you're really focusing on leadership this year, and I'm excited about that. We've talked about that. I was on your podcast and we did a nice deep dive into leadership, and really, I don't know, we talked for quite a bit about that, but thanks for being on here because I really want to continue that conversation. So I guess the first question for me, how do you define true leadership?
Well, I think that a majority of the time we intend to create or build or show up as one thing in order to bring people with us and advise them on where we're going and how to get there and to follow us in that journey. But one of the biggest things that I've realized is in true leadership, it's really a dual relationship, one with yourself and one with your team, your community, or whoever you're trying to influence. And where I've found the most impactful leadership or most effective leadership has been when I've really, really surrounded myself with the right people that believe in the outcome of what we're trying to build in order to make massive disruption or change in the world. So I would define leadership as someone taking risk to create radical change and doing it in a positive, impactful way that also allows people to follow you and enjoy that journey alongside you. So that's been really my experience with it over the years.
Yes.
Love that. You used a word in there that I want to kind of talk a little more. You use the word influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk a little bit more about influence and what is that when we're talking about influencing people. I think that there's a misconception of it's my way or the highway kind of influence. And that's not what you're talking about, right? You're talking
No.
about influencing them, and you came back and said it in a positive way. But I want to clarify that and talk a little more about that.
Yeah. So I think influencer is a buzzword today, right? And I think due to social
Mhm.
media and the growth of the internet, we've seen that word transitioned into a way of sales, a way of do this because I'm doing this, follow me, look at me. And I don't think that's leadership, actually. I think that's a buzzword that's coined in the wrong direction. Influence to me is allowing an opportunity for true human connection, building that relationship, being able to receive information, advice, against the grain conversations, things that may disrupt, may lead you down a new path. And I think it all starts with being the conduit of allowing that comfortable atmosphere,
Mhm.
allowing that opportunity to navigate those types of conversations and to have those experiences. It's not so much, hey, do this because I said so. It's more so fostering that opportunity to be vulnerable, to share your opinion, and to show your passion behind what you're trying to build or create or how you're serving and helping others. So I think that word influence often gets termed in the wrong way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form, especially with the growth of the internet and social media. But
Mhm.
where has that influence or those influencers left us? Lonely,
Yeah.
feeling lack of human connection,
Mhm.
feeling almost silenced because we're so worried about them or the outcome that we're not getting what they're getting or we're not as rich or but I think it really comes down to how do you define rich, how you
Mhm.
define success. And I think great leadership starts with developing the relationship with yourself so you know where you're going. You're your own GPS. You know the movements you need to make to accomplish the vision. And I think that's where we sometimes get lost because we go try to influence others and push others, but yet we need to focus on, do we know where we're going? Do we know what we're trying to accomplish? Do
Mhm.
we know how we
Mhm.
want to show up? Do we know how we want to serve in order to make that positive influence?
Yeah, that's good. That's interesting. That's an interesting concept, Jim. I love that. Like looking within. What are your strengths and weaknesses so that then when you're leading a team, you know what to look for in co-leaders or your team members
Yeah,
so that it becomes a cohesive team rather than a boss and a bunch of minions, you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That level of synergy, I think, is extremely important and filling the right gaps and the right hires are an
Hmm.
immediate piece of that great level of leadership.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you used the word disruptive a couple times so far. And I love that word because I feel like, when I started my corporate world, it was put your head down, do your job,
Hmm.
go home, get a paycheck, don't ask, don't, nothing. It was just like, just do your job. I know what's best, and I'm going to tell you how to do your job. And, thanks to COVID, I'm gonna throw that in there as one of the positive things that happened to COVID. I think the world changed because everyone had to work from home, obviously, right? And so that whole how do you lead people changed. And
Hmm.
now that has really shifted the whole dynamic of how do people want to be led and how do we lead them. And I think disruptive is a good way to describe that,
Hmm.
right? Because you're going against the grain of what used to be. But I think the masses are saying we want change, but I don't necessarily know that the companies or the corporations or the leaders are embracing that change. And so I
I
think,
couldn't agree more. I
yeah,
couldn't agree more. And I think part of that change, especially post COVID and, work from home and more flexibility, has allowed disruptive opportunity for everybody.
Hmm.
But I also believe that those leaders and those organizations that focus on human connection are going to disrupt their industry or their organization because as the internet moves so quick and social media moves so quick, it's left us in a world of loneliness. It's left us in a,
Yes.
a world of not a lot of self-worth. And with AI coming into businesses, I see the same parallel,
yeah,
Absolutely. It's
right? So
all,
AI is going to
yeah.
speed up. AI is going to speed up. And we're going to have so much fracture in human connection and cultures are going to dissipate. And my worry, and the reason why I'm so focused on the human connection piece around leadership, is because I think if you start practicing and playing the game today, you're setting yourself up for advantage in the future, because we're going to get to the point, just like social media, where we realize maybe this all isn't as good as we thought it was, and isn't doing as good. So I see the same parallels. And I think that disruptive approach of, you need to work harder and try harder to build relationships with your staff, your team, everybody involved in your mission, because you're not seeing them in the hallway. You're
Right.
not, grabbing a glass of water and flicking on, looking up some news as you take a break, or some social media, and engaging in a real actionable live conversation that happens due to destiny of you being in the same place at the same time as that same person taking a break during the busy working day, and you're 50 hours into the week, and it's right, and that magic conversation happens where you build that rapport, you build that relationship. So in today's world, where work from home and coffee shops, I love it, but those organizations are missing that synergy, that's that level of synergy that Jana talked about, right, where we need that.
Well,
um
and human connection, it's been proven so many times that when you have humans communicate, there's so much more involved than just dialogue. There's electricity, there's other senses that are keyed in. And it's like you said, that's a perfect example, Jim. Social media has changed so much because everybody's trying to be this sort of false level of perfection. And when you have human contact and human conversation, what I find interesting is that's when people break down and say, "Oh, well, I screwed that up too," or "I'm not." They're very human when they have a dialogue face to face, when all of the other senses are being included in that conversation: eye contact, touch, the soul. And when you sort of remove all of that and it's only typing or texting or an email, you have lost already 70% of communication is nonverbal. So you've already lost 70% of the human contact. And AI is going to even go deeper into that, because that's a computer. You're basically dialoguing with an algorithm and a computer. So I really believe that these face-to-face meetings, this tangible, who's strong on this team with this element and who's weaker, and let's get down to brass tacks and figure out where our strengths lie within our organization, and let's give them power. Let's not be afraid to give up power as a leader, and trust that your team members also have something to contribute. So it's almost like you're equaling the playing field, you know?
Totally.
And man, we got to get back to that. We got to get back to that, where there's human contact, because that's necessary. We're humans, we're not machines. We're not AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jim, you said something early on too that I wanted to come back to, just reminded myself, which was hey, you got to look at yourself as a leader first,
Mm-hmm.
right? Before you can lead the others and understand your why, which Jen and I just did a whole podcast on, what's your why? But why are you a leader, and what is your purposes, and how are you going to lead, and things of that nature. I think that people need to spend time figuring that out,
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
I
Totally.
And
mean,
they
And
don't,
it's
do they?
no,
and we live in a fast-paced world, right? We're all moving
Mhm.
100 million miles an hour, and we often forget to take those opportunities of being alone, and really thinking around our thoughts and who we want to become and how we're going to get there. And I'm a victim of it too. I'm moving a million miles an hour, and I find myself on a hike. I went left instead of right, and I find myself diving so much deeper into where I'm going and
Mhm.
those whys behind it, and it's like, man, I need to do that way more often. So I can only imagine folks that may not have a destination. They may
yeah,
not have an address plugged into that GPS of where they want to go, right? And I was totally there at one point as well. But I think identifying it and understanding it and creating a plan of how you want to show up and live your life, you owe it to yourself. You
Mhm.
deserve it. And you should be proud of creating that plan. Whether you accomplish everything on that plan or not, I think taking the risk and going for it and putting in that maximum effort is going to lead you to things you couldn't even think or believe. And I believe it's the same way around leadership. Take that risk, take that extra step, see what happens. It may not work out, but at least if you have the conviction and the passion and you know where you're going, you know why you're going there, and there's synergy and alignment with those around you, then there's momentum there, and that momentum is going to catch a break. That momentum is going to align with a partnership or another opportunity. And I think we just sometimes need to be bold, be a little bit more bold and say, hey,
Mhm.
this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
With my conference, first conference I threw last year, several hundred people, it was a bold move to take that risk, right? There was no
Yeah.
partnership, there was no financial backing. It was all my liquid cash to
Yeah.
invest in the greater good. And that I personally had to make a bold statement on a stage in order for me to show up and hold myself accountable to accomplish
Mhm.
something like that, right?
That's
And
great.
it didn't go exactly how I wanted it to, because I have big dreams and massive goals. But the things I gained that I didn't know I was going to gain because I took that opportunity to build a team and build this conference to help folks with leadership. You can't lose,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's so great.
And I wanted to just bring something up that Jana said. She was talking about that connection with people and being honest and that the transfer of energy and all that. I think it's really important to understand that when you don't have those opportunities, it is easier to digress and not give all the details and maybe not share things because you're not in the moment, you're not looking someone in the eye. And I don't think it's you're boldly lying, but you may be less reserved to share.
Hmm.
And I guess my
Absolutely.
question is to both of you, anytime I've shared some of the most vulnerable things with staff or teammates or co-founders, that's where the magic happens. That's
Hmm.
where I'm practicing the magic trick and it finally works.
Yep.
And that level of vulnerability is hard to get to, but my question to you is, have you ever experienced that where you've shared that level of vulnerability and built that human connection, and that was one of the most deepest conversations that led to some of the most amazing things? Has that ever
Hmm.
happened to you guys?
Oh, well, for me, yeah. When I do keynotes, I tell people a lot. One of the first things I lead with are some of my biggest mistakes. Like, we're not perfect here, people. I'm only sharing this as another representative of you, or, just another human being who I might be the one standing up here on stage who, I've done a lot of communication study and teaching and that kind of stuff, but that doesn't mean that we're not all human. And so I always think that you're going to gain an audience respect much quicker. And I talk about this in my keynotes how to build a keynote. Start with an experience, a human experience, a funny one, one where you kind of screwed up. Because the minute you're self-deprecating or you're admitting to being normal, that's when you're going to get connection. Nobody wants somebody to stand up there and talk about how perfect they are. So I always think introducing real life situations is going to level the playing field. Everybody's going to respect you more because you're in a position of leadership, or you're in a
Yeah.
position of, as a keynote, you're in a position where people are listening to what you have to say. So the more real you can be, one of the things that I talk about really quickly is artists that you go see. Like Jeff, we talked about, you're going to
Mm.
see, a band. You go and see artists. The artists that have the highest level of performance success are always the artists that are not trying to be perfect. They're screwing up, or something happens and they shift and they punt and they make it work. And so everybody in the audience feels connection, because everybody has that. Everybody
Yeah.
has that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny throughout my career, when I became more into leadership roles, one of my early bosses, and she was my mentor as well, used to say that I was a little too vulnerable, but that was old school stuff, right? Because I was always very open about things and just
Yeah.
shared my feelings about things in a very positive way. For me, the glass is always half full; it's never half empty. Um, but I used to get accused of almost being over vulnerable. But if I
Isn't that
tell you,
interesting?
yeah, but if I tell you that some of my best long term relationships with people over the years have been at the cost of me being vulnerable, because then it's that whole, you are human, you can do, and as a leader, you can be vulnerable. And that's one of the
Oh,
biggest
yeah.
people run into. When they're a leader, they think, A, I have to have all the answers. B, I have to be tough all the time. C, I can't show any weakness. No. I mean, to me, that's when you're a leader and you can show empathy, when you can show that you're concerned about things and you don't know what to do and you're bringing everyone together as a team. The leader is the person that brings the team together, and as a team, as a group, you work together to figure out a solution, and then everyone's on board. That's how you get people
Mhm.
aboard. You don't say this is the direction we're going, and then when everything fails, they're looking at you as the leader saying, okay, well, you screwed up, versus as a team, you're working together. And if things fail, then you failed as a team, right? And you correct it as a team and you move forward as a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then people are invested too. If they think you're reaching out for suggestions or answers, or the playing field is a little bit more level rather than,
Mm-hmm.
the boss, they're much more responsive. It's just human nature. It's human nature. It's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We're
It's a
not,
great point.
yeah.
It's a great point. I was going to say the same. Um, I think human nature is to help someone in need.
Yeah.
And if you care about that person, if you spent hours with them, if you know their family or the names of their kids, and there is a connection there, then you want to help that person. You don't want to see someone that you like hurt, right? We want to stop pain. We want to,
Right.
veer us the other way and run away from it, right? We don't want to see people get hurt. And I believe 99% of the world is good,
Mm-hmm.
and then my cup is half full too, Jeff. Like, I believe people are good. So
Yeah.
if I can be honest and vulnerable when I don't have it together and my shit is going crazy and it's not controlled chaos,
Yeah.
right? We all know controlled chaos and we know chaos.
Yep.
When it's straight chaos, I mean, what do? Not ask for help? The people that you trust the most, you've trusted them to bring your vision to life. If you're the visionary in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
you've trusted them to follow their desires and do what's right based on, their common belief and their values and their systems. Um, why wouldn't you go to those people first,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they're walking the path with you, and I think that's where we tend to um, give the highlight reel of things. And then when it gets really bad, we just put our hands up and start blaming others, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I've done that. I've done that plenty of times.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm no saint, where I say, oh, and then it all implodes, and all I had to do was just share the truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and when it comes down to those moments, I call them falling on the sword.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of pointing the fingers and trying to make yourself look great and just fall on your own sword. You created it, you know?
Yeah.
And those moments have been most impactful for me to build that true bond. And what happens after those moments is like the skyrocket effect happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was helping a company, quick story. I was helping a company 5, 6 years ago, and their retention rate of their clients, there was a service company, the retention rate was 50%. So for every two they'd hire or sign up, one would leave. And that was, to me, it
Yeah.
was like outrageously terrible. It's like, wow, right? So I started asking questions, and I found out that the account directors didn't know their clients. I literally went around, there's 5 of them, and I said, tell me 2 things personally about each one of your clients. And they couldn't do it
Yeah.
because they
See.
they were all business. They started every meeting with, coming in going, hey, Jim, okay, so here's what's going on this week. And then they check the boxes and then say, okay, have a great day. Bye.
Yeah.
And so I forced them to come up with the minimum of 2 things over the next month on every one of their clients. Well, that grew and that grew, and they got to know their people. They got to know things like, what did they do? And they're like, well, what do you want us to know? I go, what did they do for the weekend? Are they married? Did they have kids? How many kids? Anniversary, birth, whatever. I don't really care. Give me 2 personal things about each one of your clients. Well, here's the great part. After about 18 months, the retention rate went up to 93%
Yeah. That's
because
great.
because they took time to
Wow.
worry about their clients, right? To get to
Yeah.
know them as a
Yeah.
person. You're not just a box to check off. It's
Well, and that's such a great point, Jeff. Customer service is one of the biggest buzzwords now, like going above and beyond. You know what I mean? Your customers' needs, because there's so many more choices now. So I tell clients that all the time. You got to know your client and you've got to go above and beyond. It's all about that extra customer service because we do have a lot of choices now when we have service, we have service people in our life, or we have bankers, or we have
Mhm.
whatever it is. Physicians are physicians. It's like I'm going to pick a physician that I know is going to go to bat for me rather than just check off and come in and spend a few minutes with me and then move on. And that is the change between the pandemic and the fact that social technology has given us so many more choices for things in our lives. You got to go above and beyond. You've got to listen and know your client, or you're not going to be successful. It's a different
It's the new
world.
standard.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the new
Well,
standard. That's exactly right.
and
Yeah.
Jim, this is exactly what you talk about though, because here, to me, it's not just the customer service, but it's walking the walk so that
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people see how you're doing it, right? And that's the leadership thing. And one of the struggles I think that we're having right now is that people don't know how to be leaders. So I
Yeah.
want to encourage people, Jim, you got your event coming up in October, right? You do coaching, we do coaching, just get help to be better leaders, right? Go through
Yeah.
that stuff. And books, I'm going to tell you right now, I got a book coming out, Jim, you've seen some of the stuff. You need more than that. You need the human, what we're talking about today. You need that human interaction so that you can build muscle memory, so that you can be a better leader on a responsive place rather than a one where you kind of go, shoot, I should have done this.
Mm-hmm,
I think it's important for them to learn how to react during certain things. But I think
You,
that's,
you have to
that's the
do the
key.
work. I call it the work before the work,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Right.
Yes.
You know, I've been reading on a lot on visualization and got the, a TED talk coming up, right? And went and saw Dr. Justin Mosley at his recent one to support him, and was kind
Mm-hmm.
of going through and realizing the visualization of what could go wrong. I need to start visualizing that as well, not
Yeah.
the
Sure.
all the positive, right? So when I prepare my mind to get up on that stage and maybe I trip over the rug, right? Does that blow my gasket, or is there muscle memory there to say, "Oh, I've seen this before in my mind. I'm good. Brush it off.
Yeah.
Crack a joke, Jim. You crack a joke when you stumble in front of your wife. Why not do the
Yeah.
same, right?"
Yeah.
But I think that's so important to be prepared,
Mm-hmm.
and especially speaking, and you both can probably attest to this, like, what if slides don't work? What if
Right.
mic cuts in and out, right?
Mhm.
Like, we can't let that stuff throw us off. So it's the same thing in leadership is, well, if I've practiced this conversation, if I've understood this potential scenario, well, then when it does arise, I've got the tools in the toolbox,
Yep.
and I'm wearing the
Yeah.
tool belt, and I know how to use them, and I know when to use them. So
Right.
let's fix this thing. Let's keep this employee. Let's find out what the root of the cause is.
Yeah.
Let's get them motivated. Let's get them some more tools to be successful and empowered. And let's help them in their personal life, maybe even, if
Yeah.
it's a conversation about something I've experienced, and I think too, I've said this before on a podcast, and someone was like, "Well, you're not a therapist and this and that." I'm not a therapist, but what I am is a human.
The
Yep.
human and you care, you
And
know?
what I can share is experiences that have occurred in my life.
Yeah. That's exactly
And
it.
I'm no specialist, I'm no doctor, but there's been things that I've experienced, and I know how it feels, and I know how things I could have done and support I could have had and I didn't get, and I know that took longer to heal and to get over things. So why wouldn't I be a resource to share, you know? And I think that's the piece where we need to go deeper and becomes that new standard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It,
Absolutely agree.
it's being compassionate. I
It is
think the
being
world
compassionate.
the world has um, we've reduced compassionate curiosity
Yeah.
around how people are.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I absolutely agree with that, and I think it's a part of as we develop and grow and change the way that we're doing things. I think that we also just need to be open to opportunities. We need to be open to the fact that we don't have all the answers. That it's okay to stumble. All these things that we just been. We got to, as humans, say that that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that, and we don't do that enough. We all think, well, what did they just think of that? I mean, trust me, every time you come off the stage, I'm sure you go, well, I wonder if someone really if I touched anybody or if I didn't, and you kind of say, what did they think of that and this and that, and you're doing a lot of self-reflection, and I know that because Jana does it and I do it. Where if we can just get comfortable delivering our message and know that it might have only affected one person, but man, that's one person. It's one person more than we had yesterday, right?
That's exactly right.
It's not
Totally.
again, as I tell people, so I just did a little 2-hour workshop for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders about leadership in Gallatin locally. And the cool part is that as leaders, the first thing I taught them was, it's not about you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said that a couple of times to them. Right. And so then they were interviewed. The city of Gallatin actually interviewed them as they were going around Gallatin on a little scavenger hunt. And the one girl goes up, she goes, yeah, we had this guy that was teaching us all about leadership, and how it's really the first thing he taught us was, it's not about you. It's about taking care of others and just making sure. And I was like, as a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader, she got it. I loved it. Right.
That's awesome.
As adults, if we can start remembering that, it's going to change the way we go about things.
Yeah.
So,
Totally. I think it's hard in the moment sometimes, but again, if we're practicing and preparing,
that's right,
as good leaders do, then we won't beat ourselves up, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can feel those emotions and go, hey, I'm getting a little bit better. Let me handle this a little bit different, or whatnot.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. I'm getting a little bit better. That's all we can ask for,
That's right. Yeah,
a little bit better here.
Well, Jim, thanks so much for being on today. I know you and I could talk, and Janet, we could just sit here and talk about leadership. I mean, there's all kinds of other topics within leadership that I wanted to get to, but obviously we went down several different paths. But thanks so much for sharing your vision. Your enthusiasm is infectious. So just please keep that going. I love that. You have an event coming up October 23rd, 24th, maybe? No, September, right?
September 17th and 18th in Nashville. Yep.
I got another conference coming up. I'm sorry about that. I mixed it up. So 17th and 18th in Nashville. And you're going to be at the Walgreens.
Say that again?
Where's it going to be at?
Woolworth Theater in downtown Nashville. Yep.
Yeah, that's such a cool place. I love it. I love it. I love it.
September 17th and 18th. That's great.
And people can register for that. How do they do that?
ImpactEffect24.com.
Cool.
You can grab there. We got a couple different ticket levels. You can check out all the speakers and how we're doing it a little bit different. It's going to be a really cool experience to bring you on a journey to become a better leader. So we're really excited.
Very excited about that. And then if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
At The Real Jim Morris on Instagram. Feel free to hit me up on any other social channel, Jim Morris.
Cool. Love it.
Awesome.
Again, Jim, thanks so much for being on today. We really appreciate it. To all our listeners out there, we just love that you provide us this opportunity to share our thoughts and our ideas, and we're really jumping on the leadership bandwagon lately. So thanks for that. We love when you interact with us, when you send us emails. Keep those coming. Jen and I always love to see those. So until the next time, stay safe and be healthy.